Mr. President.
Senator from Oklahoma.
Well, first of all, let me say to my friend from Oregon, help is on its way, and it's a very difficult thing because we don't know, we don't have any idea how long this is going to last. When you stop and think about a land that is in the tropics and not having electricity, it's something that it's hard for your imagination to get arms around the devastation that takes place, and I appreciate the fact he's brought that up. Mr. President, when I watch the news, I can't help but see that the media is kind of showing a picture of Washington that really doesn't exist. The news would have the public believe that there's a lot of dysfunction in the administration and that nothing is getting done, but I'd like to share some examples of a government working to get America back in business. Now, in my former life, I was participating for some 20 years or longer in the free enterprise business. I was making money, I was losing money. I was hiring people, doing what I thought Americans are supposed to be doing. And all that time, the major problem I had was the obstruction of the federal government. And that's one of the reasons I actually ran in the first place to try to save the free enterprise system. I never dreamed that we would end up with an administration, and as well-meaning as the Obama administration was, that would be putting people out of business. During the last administration, the Obama administration, new rules were created that had no purpose but to hinder economic growth. In fact, President Obama is the first president since Hoover to not hit 3% GDP growth in any year of his presidency. With every industry coming under scrutiny from every regulatory agency, President Obama added more regulations to the Federal Register than any other president in history. And businesses are complying with regulations costing in the neighborhood of $2 trillion. Now, you got to keep in mind when you hear that business or corporations are paying this, it's not them that's paying, it's the public. It's people who are out there, and they, either through increased costs of goods and services or taxes, they are paying it. I heard an alarming figure the other day that some 65% of the people in America, this is a poll that was about a week old, 65% of the American people are opposed to any stopping of regulations in corporations, and yet they're the very ones that are paying for all this fun that they're having. Well, anyway, this administration has tried to do something about all of the overregulation, all of the rules that the previous administration had put in place. Now, there are two ways you can do this. One is through executive orders. People know what that is. That's the president coming along and giving an executive order that will undo damage that was done by a previous executive order imposing a new rule on America. And so that has been taking place. At the same time, the other way of doing it is through a CRA. Not many people know what a CRA is. A CRA is a Congressional Review Act. It was started about 20 years ago and never been used until this administration. And what it does, it says if you have up to 30 members of the Senate, you can get a CRA against a rule that some administration is putting in place in a certain time period. So it's a way that people who are elected to office, accountable to the people, can get things done and be answerable to the people, as opposed to an unelected bureaucrat that's out there imposing hardships and rules on the public. So anyway, we actually, this administration came in and they passed 14 Congressional Review Act resolutions. That was 14 in the first few weeks, actually. The savings from the repeal of these 14 regulations were estimated to be $3.7 billion in cost and 4.2 million hours of paperwork, the most expensive of which, and this is kind of interesting, because I introduced a CRA, and it happens to be that mine was the first one to pass, and so I had the first signing ceremony with our new President Trump during the initial days of his administration. The rule that was imposed by the Obama administration was one that would force domestic oil and gas companies to release all the information they had in formulating their estimates and their bids in competition with maybe China or other countries, and putting our domestic oil and gas companies at a competitive disadvantage. So this is all a part of the Obama war on fossil fuels. Everybody knows it. Fossil fuels are oil, coal, and gas, and this was an effort to do that. Anyway, we introduced a bill repealing that as a CRA, and it was successful. And so we had our signing ceremony, and that was history. Now, that is one of 45 executive orders and one of 14 successful CRAs. Now, in addition to the CRAs, this is President Trump, has signed 45 executive orders with the goal of reducing red tape and cutting back on duplicative and harmful administrative state. And thanks to our colleagues on the other side of the aisle for changing the Senate rules, because with their help, President Trump and a Republican-led Senate have been able to confirm one of the most conservative cabinets in history, and they have been working to implement the president's pro-business, pro-jobs, pro-economic growth policies. If you want to see the effect of the election of this administration is having, you only need to look at the energy industry. Of course, that's to say nothing about the fact that we now have a great conservative judge. But when you look at the energy industry that's been under attack for 8 years, within weeks after taking office, the Army Corps of Engineers under the Trump administration approved an easement for the Dakota Access Pipeline that had been withheld by the Obama administration for nothing more than political pressure from the far left. Next month, the State Department issued a cross-border permit for the Keystone Pipeline, again, a permit that had been withheld purely for political far left reasons. Later that same month, the Department of Interior lifted the coal leasing ban that the Obama administration had placed on federal land. Now, federal land have about 40% of the coal production in the United States, so that was just devastating to that industry. It was a killer. Another notable win for energy came just last week out of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. That's FERC. FERC was without a quorum from February until mid-August, creating a backlog and delaying $50 billion of energy infrastructure projects from moving forward. Well, the new quorum has gotten to quick work to address that backlog, approving pipelines and power agreements. However, a decision made last week has clearly sent a message that America's energy sector is open for business again. For years, the New York State had been delaying consideration of water certifications that are required for FERC approval to allow construction of several federally approved pipelines. The Millennium Pipeline in particular would take natural gas 9 miles from one pipeline to a natural gas-fired electric plant providing clean, cheap, natural gas power. And New York State has delayed and denied the certification simply because, again, the radical left doesn't want it. Last week, FERC took the authority granted to them under the Clean Water Act to override New York State's denial of a certification because New York waived their authority under the law. Section 401 of the Clean Water Act says that, and I'm quoting now, if a state refuses to act on a request for certification within a reasonable time period, which should not exceed 1 year, after the receipt of such request, the certification requirements shall be waived with respect to such federal application. Well, with the environmentalists increasingly urging states like New York, New Jersey, and Virginia to block pipelines by delaying and withholding otherwise valid certifications. These states are interfering with interstate commerce, a role that is wholly within the purview of the federal government. I applaud the administration for the progress that they've made, and the independent agencies for taking a stand against the gamesmanship of radical left environmentalist groups and those who do their bidding by using loopholes in their official authority to block valid, compliant, energy projects that safely transport cheaper and cleaner energy across state lines. With a government that works with industry, not against them, we're starting to see companies unleash investments across the country. In fact, the economy has picked up since Trump and his administration have come into office, with the economy growing 3% in just the second quarter, which was the first full quarter under the administration, and the fastest pace of growth in 2 years, according to a website called the USS CNN Money. With each nomination, confirmation, and policy directive, President Trump and the Republican-led Congress are signaling to the business community and American workers that America is open for business again. I look forward to continuing to work with my colleagues to address our energy industry's needs so that billions in private investment can be utilized to deliver American products to American consumers around the world. Just this week, I introduced a bill to address known bottleneck issues in FERC permitting process that add unnecessary delays by identifying participating agencies early in the process and provide for concurrent reviews and provide transparency. Now, this is something that is just common sense. And I thank very much Senator King and his staff for working with me and my staff on this legislation. And I hope my colleagues would join us in getting these reforms into law. And so I only bring this up because you would never know that this much progress is being made in the economy through the Trump administration, and somehow that report doesn't get through.